Hello, onward we go in our quest to understand the requirements of the individual oral for the literature and language and literature class. So this video we will talk about choosing effective quotes. Effective quotes show choices made by the author and develop the global issue, in particular the thesis or focus that we identify. We heard a student in the last video giving a thesis about Langston Hughes's Beaumont to Detroit. Her thesis is that Hughes will provide a voice to the African American population and encourage them to fight for a change for equal rights in his poem and the body of work or other poems that he has written. Remember that on my blog you can find a link to the complete poem and also planners that will be referenced later in the video, as well as a handout that can support you in following along with the poem. And you find the link in the video description. Here is the student's first quote related to global issue and analysis.
The first way that he shows the global issue of racism is by undermining the hypocritical American government. And this can best be seen in the quote where he says, "Yet you say we're fighting for democracy. Then why don't democracy include me?" He's creating underlying solidarity between his African American audience as well as the audience abroad that is going through discrimination. And his subversive tone highlights his lack of regard for what the government claims to be saying. And there's juxtaposition between democracy and not being included. And throughout the poem, there's a repetition of democracy, and there's also a rhyme between democracy and me, which highlights the fact that although the government claims to include everybody and to be fighting for victims abroad, but when it comes to their own people, they forget that they have to give them equal rights as well.
So let's break down her analysis here. She starts by pointing out that the American government is hypocritical in regards to race, and that clearly ties into the authorial intention with the global issue, and then includes this powerful quote, "Yet you say, we're fighting for democracy, then why don't democracy include me?" So she's off to a good start. So you always want to be thinking about the effect on the audience pretty much everywhere in this course, and that holds true in the individual oral. So she states specifically the African American audience. She wants to create, or he wants to create solidarity, and also audience abroad. And then his choice to have a subversive tone or to undermine the government because she says his lack of regard for what the government claims to be saying. I feel she could be more specific there, but she's addressing that he has very little faith in the government or belief in its claims that it fights for equality because it doesn't provide equality back home. Then she goes on to include more authorial choice with juxtaposition between democracy and not being included, so a great use of a word that is an authorial choice. And then she identifies the repetition, the rhyme. Those are both choices made by Langston Hughes when he was writing the poem, and how those choices have an effect on audience, and connects back to the global issue, stating that all of this together reinforces the idea that the government does not give equal rights to African Americans who fight for equality abroad when they come back home, which is an excellent perceptive point relating perfectly to her global issue. As I listen to this analysis, I would suggest for her improvement that there's clearly irony in here. It's ironic that the government asks the African Americans to die abroad for equality and then not giving them equal rights at home, and I feel like that authorial choice is missing from her analysis. And also she identifies the African American audience and the audience abroad, but Langston Hughes also was targeting white society and the government and trying to inspire feelings of empathy and guilt and outrage. So I feel like she could have a little richer analysis by including those details as well. So as we look at her planner and her organization, we see that she is addressing providing voice for African Americans, in particular undermining a hypocritical American government, and then we have all her analysis. Notice how the planner pushes her to find quote, dealing with global issue, and then your analysis should connect again back to global issue. What literary devices connect to the global issue? What effect is the audience experiencing in regards to the global issue? One last point of feedback for this student, she goes on to pick something from the body of work that also clearly shows the hypocritical American government. If we look back at the last video and her thesis statement, she says she wants to provide a voice for African Americans and encourage them to fight for equal rights. I think she could include the idea of undermining the hypocritical American government in her introduction because it's such a key point in her analysis. And this hypocrisy in the American government frames her first point about the American government found in Beaumont to Detroit and in Langston Hughes's body of work, which we will address more in the following video. In the next video, we will explore how to transition to the body of work, which she does next. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below. I always love hearing from you, and have a good one.